Hi, everybody. Back again. We've had a nice trip around the world. We've seen high-speed rail all over the world. But now we're going to dive a little deeper and go into one of my favorite places, is Spain. And there's a great examples, great lessons learned, best practices that we all can adapt from Spain. I have a particularly warm place in my heart around Spain high-speed rail, and that I feel like my high-speed rail career grew up with Spain. I was reminded in our speaker today, Maria Luisa, we met back in 2018 when HNTB sent a delegation to Madrid. We spent some time with them when Maria Luisa and I first met. This will be a great panel. Maria Luisa Dominguez, who's the president of the European Infrastructure Association, will talk about the Spanish history, the Spanish story of high-speed rail. But also joining us today is Mercedes Serra, who's the CEO of Sener USA. Unfortunately, Christina, who was with Mayfex, unfortunately had a family emergency, is not able to join us today. But Roberto Rodriguez, also with Sener, is filling in for her as well today. Roberto is head of engineering for Sener. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it on to Maria Luisa, and then we'll have a panel discussion and hopefully save enough time to open it up for questions from the audience. Maria Luisa?
Hi. Hi, good morning. I have in front of me a tough task today because I only have 10 minutes to speak about Spanish experience in high speed. I could be speaking about that for hours, maybe for days, because I've been working for high speed network in Spain for 26 years. And I will try to do my best, and I hope to show you more or less how the system has been developed and how it's working now. And for sure, as we have some network breaks, I will be delighted to share more details with all of you around them. So to give some context, I have here the comparison between California and Spain for you to make an idea about the size of the country comparing with California. And also the population. In Spain, we are 47 million people. In California, 40 million people. And also we have big cities and empty parts of the country similar to California. And we also have challenging orography. In fact, Spain is the country in the European Union with more mountains, so it's impossible to find out a railway line with no tunnels. In fact, we have very, very long tunnels in Spain. Other similarities, we are a tourist destination, as you are here in California. And also we are highly concerned about environment. So for us, developing a sustainable mode of transport is quite important for us. The main difference between Spain and California is the GDP per capita. In California is over twice than in Spain. Okay, for you to understand the concerns about ADIF, our responsibilities comes from the planning and design, construction, maintenance and renewal of the network, traffic management and the capacity allocation, not only for high speed, I mean for the whole railways infrastructure in Spain. We could say 3 networks, the conventional lines with a different gauge from the standard gauge of the rest of Europe and here in USA, and then the high-speed network and also a metric gauge network, and over 1,500 stations. For you to understand how we have been developing the high-speed network, the first line was commissioned in 1992, and little by little we have been constructing, as you can see, I could say quite quickly, and good quality. On the right of the image, you have a quite interesting statistics. That means that in the 80s, 70s, 80s of the last century, long-distance railways were decreasing. In fact, we had the sensation that they were going to disappear. And then appeared the high speed. So you can see from 1992, traffic started to increase again. And then, we had the pandemic. Later on, you will have another image. But as you can see, high speed came to, we could say, save railways, long-distance railways in Spain. And here we have the high-speed network. We have over 2,400 miles. And now under development, I mean construction and designing, we have over 1,000 more miles. We have already invested more than 57 billion euros. And we have different origin from the funding, but the main funding, of course, is the national one, almost 50%. But also we get grants from the European Unions and also from the European Investment Bank, some loans. And we have been the state-owned company who opened for green bonds for the first time, as the advantage of having environmental friendly system. It is quite easy to open to the market with green bonds, and they are being a big success. And as I said, here you see the network, as we saw before from the UIC conference. It is a star system, but also we have some corridors, the one on the coast of the Mediterranean coast, and under construction, the corridor from the Atlantic coast, which comes from Portugal. I think it's quite important to underline the efficiency of the construction of the network in Spain. Here you can see, if we compare the cost of a kilometer and the construction, we are the third country in comparison with Morocco. In the case of Norway, for me, it was a surprise when I saw this, because Norway is a quite difficult country as well with orography. But in fact, the line which is compared here is not exactly a high-speed line, but okay, it's considered like that in this comparison. But you can see the figures, and the cost per mile we have is quite good. And if we take into consideration also the quality of the network. So I think that is very important. It's not just building in a good price, but also having a high quality of the network as it is. The main and more important benefit we already got was the reduction of time in very important distances. And you can see in some of them even over 70% of time reduction. That has made that Segovia is the third case you can see there. Segovia, which is close to Madrid, it has become in some way a place to live and then come to Madrid to work daily because of the distance and the time. In half an hour, you are from Madrid to Segovia. But also other cities of the country, they have been able to develop. And I think the most important is not only having traffic from aviation. The most important is getting traffic from road, because it's not a question only of environmental affairs. It's also important to reduce congestion and to reduce accidents. So that is the main challenge we go on having now in Spain. And another very, very important thing we have got in the last years is the opening to competency, and it has been a success, as always, as also said by UIC. That means that now citizens have more offer, so it's a better public service for citizens, but very important for them is the reduction on the ticket price. It has been the average of 40%. That means that maybe before high speed was for business, but not for everybody. And we usually say in Spain, and I could say in already the European Union, it is a kind of democratization of high speed. So now the prices are very, very important, that we are attracting a lot of passengers from road. And also for ADIF is quite important, because even though we have reduced the truck access charges in 23%, related in some way to the pandemic of the COVID, but even in that case, we have increased our incomes 33%, so we can reinvest in our network. Here you can see how the market related with high speed has been developing in the last years. As you can see from 2006, how it was increasing the number of passengers, even though it was a monopolistic market. Then you can see 2020, the fall of the pandemic, but it was more or less at the same time as the opening to the competency 2021. And from that moment, how traffic increased incredibly quicker. Again, having a comparison between these two could say similar areas. And now from Los Angeles to San Francisco, you have 96 planes. And in the case of Madrid, Barcelona, This is the relationship with at 90 trains per day and 30 planes. Before the high-speed line was commissioned, we had 4.4 million passengers by plane. And now with this relationship, we are serving over 6 million passengers. I think it's also quite important because once the high-speed line was opened, in fact, it was opened not directly from Madrid to Barcelona. We started with different relations. 2006, we opened till Lleida, which is a medium-sized city between Madrid and Barcelona. And then very quickly, we got many passengers from the plane because of the reduction of the time, even though we hadn't got the final time we have now, which is 2 hours and a half. And then in 2008, the global line was opened. And then we reached more or less the position 25% for aviation and 75% for railways. But once we have opened to competency, and after the pandemic, as you can see from 2021, now we have this relationship, almost 80% for a high-speed train and then 20% for aviation. And I think it's quite important to underline that even though the first high-speed line, which was commissioned in 1992, we attract some, or we use some foreign technology, for example, related with electrification and systems from the German market and the rolling stock from the French market. But once we decided to go on with the network, we started to develop our own technology and our own industry. So working the public sector, ADIF, working with all Spanish companies related to consultancy and industry, we have developed a quite complex market, and now we are exporting and sharing this experience with different countries. And in fact, MAFEX, which is the association with all railways industry of different areas, as I said, a consultancy, designing, build, and also more technological systems. Now they are working in more than 100 countries in the 5 continents. So just some takeaways to give you some messages. We really think never is too late to start. We are absolutely sure that once you test the first high-speed lines, you will be convinced that it is very, very interesting, and once you realize the service they provide, for sure you will go on building more high-speed railways. For sure, it's not a one-fits-all solution. I mean, you have to adapt any solution to the different landscape you have, the geography, the technology, and overall what is very important is the time you need in the relation between the 2 cities you are connecting. And what is very, very important is that it's a design for the future because the infrastructure lasts a lot. In our case, we are planning, designing, and building for at least 100 years. So it's very important to think about how things and how technology is going to evolve and to develop. So thank you very much for your attention. And as I said before, a pleasure to go on sharing with you.
All right, thank you, everybody. What a great presentation. Thank you. Mic's on? Can you guys hear me, everybody? Kind of quiet. Okay. There we go, better. Just hold my tie up. So Spain is really an interesting model and some great lessons we can learn. What impressed me about Spain, and I've been part of the whole Spanish experience for a while now, both using in consultants, but also traveling quite a bit to Spain and meeting with them there. First of all, we heard earlier today that it's the 3rd highest density of rail in the world, which is quite phenomenal given the size of the country. But what always impressed me about Spain, and I'm going to ask our panelists to talk about it in different contexts, was their vision of high-speed rail and how they executed it. The other area that Maria Lisa talked a little bit around is the interoperability. That was really a model, I think, for Europe and for ERTMS. I think you were one of the first to adopt ERTMS level 2, if I'm not mistaken, right? And the third is the social dynamics. How did really the implementation and execution of high-speed rail change the social fabric of Spain, and what can we learn from that? So Mercedes, can you first start us off with how would you compare and contrast the experience of the development of high-speed rail in Spain versus how we're trying to develop it here in the US, but maybe what you've seen around the world as well?
Thank you, Peter. Sure. I would start by saying that this is not, of course, an easy question because every country is different, and oftentimes we've been discussing about how people concentrate in cities in Europe versus here, where the population is more spread, and this leads to the car culture. Maybe I will start by picking a couple of elements. There are others we can discuss later. But something that strikes me somehow is first how the owners, how the agencies are organized. So to begin with, what we find here most often is that the delivery agencies are different from the planning agencies. I would say this creates some kind of additional difficulty. Also, mainly the power to initiate a project like this is at the state level, and we don't see much, although I think we are in a turning point, but we don't see much federal direction in terms of planning. Now we have these corridors from Amtrak, but this is very, very recent. So usually you have a global planning and then the different pieces fall into place. You have standard issues, interoperability issues. So we don't see so much of that here. As indicating, this is, we perceive a chance now with all the federal funding of the projects, with Amtrak not only being an operator, but an agency able to develop capital programs. So this is a chance. They have assigned one specific person for high-speed rail. I think we are on a turning point. And the other point I would like to mention very briefly is the push, the strength of the private sector here. I would say that in all the, I'm happy to see, we are involved in high-speed rail not only in Europe or in Spain, in UK, but also in Emirates and in other areas of the country. And this is the only case where we have seen the private sector stepping in. I mean, sometimes they step in for the operation, as we have seen earlier, but it's here the first time where we have seen the private sector stepping in a big way for the capital program investment. And I really hope to see a big success here. I think if that can succeed, it's only here in the US. And if it happens, it can set a new paradigm for the future, for the rest of the world.
Roberto, can you discuss a little bit about how the development of high-speed rail in Spain has really affected the social fabric, both the economics, the mobility, and also the environmental?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I will hold my tie too. So yeah, I think the high-speed rail network, as it was developed in the 90s and early 2000s, the biggest improvements in the network were established. Really changed the social fabric of Spain. It connected a lot of medium-sized cities to the capitals and centers of power and economic power, political and economic power in Spain. And therefore, this opened a broad range of possibilities for the citizens. You know? Basically, people could now think about working on these areas where there was more availability, jobs or more opportunities, and still live on their medium-sized cities, right? This is a trend that has happened quite a lot in Spain. Also for students, no, to try to study far from home and coming back every weekend or whatever, no? And also for tourism, right? Tourism has, of course, propelled a lot of the passenger ridership that we have seen in the last years. Spain is a tourist country. We always rival between France and the US in number of tourists per year. I think we got 80 million last year. So yeah, for sure, high-speed rail has facilitated this quite a lot.
You brought this up, Mercedes, around the public-private partnership. And I was thinking, Maria Luis, Maria Luisa, if you can talk a little bit about the model in Spain around the public-private partnership. Just on our panel here today, we have Sener, who is a family-owned technology systems business, but also Maria Luisa works as a former CEO and is also associated with ADIF, which is a state agency. If you can talk a little bit about the public-private model in Spain and how it may apply here in the U.S.
Okay, I don't know if it is possible to have the same model exactly here, but I think the one we have developed in Spain is quite interesting. I think the idea of having an agency, as you say, ADIF, with the staff well prepared and overall learning lessons from each line to focus on the second one. So I think we have been able to use those lessons learned to having we have been able to standardize all the different subsystems we have. Not only civil works, that maybe they're the ones who were more developed when we started, but also about track, about electrification and signaling. So I think that has provoked to have in the agency very well prepared staff, but for sure working with the private sector. So private sector, in some way we could say, they have been learning together with us. So now all companies in Spain as well prepared as staff in ADIF we are. So with this lesson learned, each new high-speed line is improving the difficulties we found in the previous one. So we could say Madrid Seville, for example, it was the first one. Now we are in fact working on it because the assets after 30 years, we have to renew them. And we are not only renewing the assets, we are improving some of them. As you said, the ERTMS in this line was not commissioned, and now we are working to commission it now in the already working high-speed line. And some of the main problems we are focusing now is due to the success of high speed, we have to increase the size and shape of the stations. Now maybe the bottlenecks of the system are in the stations. So at this moment, if you come to Spain, and I hope so after this panel, you will go there to visit high-speed system, and you will find most of the main stations and the works. It is not comfortable for sure, because we are doing the works at the same time that maintaining the service in the tracks and also for passengers. But I think it's good news that you need to increase the size of the stations. That means that more passengers are coming. So now the main stations in Madrid, the two main stations, Chamartín and Atocha, are under works. And we are finishing the second main station in Barcelona, Sagrera, which at this moment doesn't give service. And we are starting in the coming months big works also in Sants. So if we don't work together, private sector and public sector, that wouldn't have been possible to achieve.
One of the things that struck me about the differences, particularly in the Spanish model, but I think around Europe as well, but is the level of, I mean, it's a very robust and competitive private industry providing services and products. But also the public sector is a very robust, full of a level of expertise, depth of resources is quite significant, that's a very different model that we have here in the U.S., where there's a heavier reliance on the expertise in the private sector than necessarily in some of the public sector. I mean, not in all cases, but that's a clear differentiation. Maybe building on that, one of the amazing things around Spain is the speed of your delivery, how quickly you were able to deliver success in high-speed rail. And let me open it up to the entire panel. So, Roberto, if you want to start off about your thoughts of that, and if you want to engage in a discussion around why you were able to deliver high-speed rail so quickly and so effectively.
Yeah, of course. I think there has been several factors. First is political will. There has been, since the inception of the first high-speed rail lines in Spain, consensus in both sides of the aisle in the government that high-speed rail was a good thing for the country, and the discussions were more on where to go first, or what to invest first, and if high-speed rail made sense or not. There was a consensus on that. So that has provided a stability on the industry, on programs that have been delivered by the government with different colors of government throughout these years, right? So that's the first thing I would say. The second is, of course, a constant revenue of investments, not only from the Spanish government, but also from the European Union, as you can see in the presentation from Marisa. That was for sure one key to have a very rapid development. And then tying it with the last discussion we had about the private sector, I think the Spanish government and the IF and all the agencies implied made a wise decision when they started developing this technology, because this was new for most of the Spanish companies. So they basically approached this, the bidding was for always small contracts, okay? So many small or medium companies in Spain could afford to get into one of these segments. This, of course, increased the level of coordination in the agencies, but because these agencies are usually more staffed with technical people, and they have more resources to manage and control this, they were able to do that. But that increased, of course, the level of competitiveness of the engineering companies and construction companies, and therefore, in the end, it was beneficial for the development of the network.
Something that Roberto said is the consensus, political consensus, that was key, because we have seen in other neighboring countries that depending on which political party win the elections, they went on with high speed, and then if it was the other political party, no. But in our case, it didn't matter which party won the elections, they went on pushing for high speed. Maybe, as he said, okay, first this line, first this other part, all of them very convinced. And I could say maybe, I said before in my presentation, but I really think it is very important. Once you test the first high-speed line, I think it's very difficult that you stop building new ones. So I think that's why it was a big success. In the case of Spain, some people 30 years ago discussed why we had started with Madrid-Sevilla, being Barcelona, the second main city in the country. But I really think now, with the vision of 30 years for sure, that it was a good decision, because maybe we have built the first line between Madrid and Barcelona, it had been a success, people would have said, okay, it was clear between Madrid and Barcelona. But it was a success between Madrid and Sevilla. Okay, Sevilla is an important city in Spain, but not as important as Barcelona. So once you realize the success between Madrid and Sevilla, it was much easier to go on being convinced that it was going to work between Madrid, Barcelona, and other main cities. It's true that if you have seen in the map, Spain has a peculiar distribution of population, because most of people are in the coast and in Madrid. And so that's why maybe it works so well, this kind of mobility system.
Great. Well, I want to make sure we keep a little bit of time for questions and answers from the audience. Maybe a quick, rapid lightning round response from each of you. What do you think are the most important lessons learned from Spain that we should be applying here in the United States? So just real quick answers. Mercedes.
Political bipartisan support and a stable stream of revenues has been mentioned. But I would say that something that has worked very well for us has been this open system, interoperability, open to all the different technologies. We have now simultaneously systems from Siemens, from Alstom, from Bombardier, which is now Alstom, from CAF, and the like. But of course, to do that, you need a very strong owner, in line with what you were saying before, Peter, because you need to make sure to put everything together in an area where safety is always the consideration number one.
Great. Roberto, quick.
I would say having strong agencies is a good point. I think it's not only common for Spain, but in general, all European countries that have developed these networks share that in common. They have strong bodies of knowledge and staff agencies that can push this forward.
And maybe I would say never is too late. Okay. I mean, maybe we have developed 30 years ago, you can start now, but never is too late, because now you will profit from the best technological system. They are more developed. So good luck for that.
Great. Thank you. All right, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. We have about 5 or 6 minutes. So is there somebody with a mic out there? Or? Okay. Anybody? I have one here.
Wait for the mic, though.
You don't see you.
They can find
So people can hear online. Thank you very much. I think Spain is a very great case. We in Europe, but all around the world. I have a question for you because you are living in an area, as Maria Luisa told, that is changing. So how do you see, infrastructure, the fact that you have not anymore just one operator, but you have 3.5 with Avlo, if you consider half that Avlo, in terms of managing for different. Oh. Okay, now for a diff it was not easy in terms of managing, also with the package. I don't want to enter too much, but also for the infrastructure because you have not anymore 50 trains per day between Madrid and Barcelona. You have 90, sure, very well. So great, but I imagine that is more complex. So I have this question that is I'm interested to have an answer. Thank you.
For sure, it's more complicated because before we only had to speak with one railway undertaking. It was much easier, and even though it was the state-owned company, Renfe, in the end we have the minister, and now it's more complicated. Yes, because when there is an incident, you have to discuss the consequence of that incident. But anyway, we are so strongly believers that this is the way to really profit from the investment we have done on the network. Because having such a great network for just 50 trains, as you said, now we have the impression that we have more trains, and that means more service for citizens. In fact, the rest of the areas of the country now are demanding to go on to the second phase of liberalization, of opening to competency, because they see how the prices have decreased and the number of services, as you said before, in Italy, trains each 5 minutes. It's not exactly the case in Spain, but you have not only in peak hours, during the whole day, a lot of trains to choose, not only different brands, but also different schedule. So it is so good for citizens that citizens from the west part of the country, they are demanding, okay, when liberalization is coming to our areas. So for sure it's more difficult for us, but we are so happy, for sure that has meant a transformation for the company, the way we manage the lines. But we are proud of what we are doing, and we are going on developing in other lines.
So looking at some of the slides that you presented, the increase in high-speed train travel corresponded with a large decrease in regional air travel. As that started to take shape in Spain, I'm not sure if you're aware, but lobbyists in the United States have some serious influence, and I expect that as this becomes more and more real, airlines and oil lobbyists, so on and so forth, will create headwinds for us. Did you have those issues in Spain? And if so, what kind of recommendations can you make to help us continue momentum?
Okay. Okay, in the Spanish framework, lobbyists are not permitted. So, so I guess that's an advantage. But previously it was said that it's not just a question of competing with other modes of transport. It's like offering to citizens and then they choose. And for sure, in some cases, people are choosing plane because maybe if they live out of the city center, it's not easy to go to the city center to take the train. And also, if you are taking an international plane, for example, if you come from Valencia on the east coast of the Mediterranean coast and you are flying to Washington, you have to come to Madrid to take a plane. So you fly Valencia, Madrid, and then Madrid, Washington. So it's an advantage not having lobbies, but I think it's a question of providing the citizens different possibilities, and then they will make their choice.
But also, if I may, Marisa, what we are hearing is that these short-term distances are not typically the most efficient or the most profitable for the airlines. So it's good to, and they are working on that, to have, it has been mentioned this morning in a presentation, to have a collaboration, a cooperation between the high-speed rail operators and the airline operators, finding a way which is a win-win for all the different parties.
In fact, in Spain, Iberia was the company who came to Adif to ask us to build the connection between Chamartín station to the airport, because they wanted to give up doing the flight between not very big cities, the domestic flights, because it was not a business for them. So they asked us to build that connection, so to provide this Valencia-Washington, to come Valencia-Madrid by train, and then take the plane to come here. So it's not a question of competing. I think it's a question of providing the best mobility solution for each different distance.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap up. 2 decades ago, that wasn't a real issue. I mean, there's the famous story of Southwest Airlines killing Texas high-speed rail back in the day. I think the airlines and the public and leaders have evolved from that, and seeing the value of high-speed rail providing additional capacity at airports for the high-intensity routes and the more high-profit routes. So I think it's less of an issue today than it was before. So with that, we are out of time, and we're just right before lunch. So I'm going to
Thank you very much.
Round of applause to our panelists.
Yes.